Hi, my name's Hubwood and today I'm going to show you how to undervolt an RTX 3050 or any other Nvidia GPU since the Pascal series for that matter, which is the 10th series. Which is going to save you a lot of wattage, money, heat and noise. Yeah, that's about it. It will also probably increase the lifespan of your GPU and it will make you even more sexy. Yeah, I know that's almost impossible. But I will show you my preferred undervolt settings as well, so make sure not to skip through the video, but instead take it all in, okay? So, let's go. So before we start, make sure that you download these 3 following apps if you don't have them already. We're talking about MSI Afterburner, which comes with Riva Tuner Statistics Server, as well as HW Info, also called Hardware Info, and the Unigine Heaven Benchmark. I will post the links to the official download sites in the description, so if you don't have these apps, pause the video and come back once you do. Hey, pause the video and then come back. Okay. So, PS, if you already know how to set up MSI Afterburner and an OSD, which is going to show you the GPU voltage and wattage, you can skip to the chapter voltage curve in the timeline. Alright, we are going to use MSI Afterburner to actually perform the undervolting and also measure and display the FPS, the graphics processor core clock and memory clock, as well as the temperatures. With HW Info, we are going to measure and display the GPU wattage and the voltage. Okay, so as a first step, we are going to start Unigine Heaven Benchmark and we are going to use it in windowed mode. So this is already open, as you can see here. When you open the benchmark, you're going to see this window. Make sure to uncheck the full screen and choose a resolution which is a bit less than your display's resolution, so you have some free space and can just skip through the programs easily. Okay, and we are going to open this and just leave it running in the background for now. After that, we're going to open MSI Afterburner, which is this little fella over here. And we are activating these checkbooks over here, so it's off now and now it's activated. This is going to ensure that the values we are adjusting are applied when you boot up the PC. Actually, this button might be somewhere else if you're using a different skin, but for this video I'm going to use the new skin, which comes with MSI Afterburner and is the default skin when you install a new version. Now open the menu from MSI Afterburner and make sure that you activate the following checkboxes if possible. This is going to ensure that MSI Afterburner will start after booting up and it will allow us to actually change the voltage of the GPU. Next up, we're going to the monitor tab over here and activate all the options that you later want to see in the OSD above the game that you can see over here. So what you can see over here, these values, I've chosen them over here. So we need the GPU temperature, that's important. We need the GPU usage as well as the GPU core clock. And you make sure that they are not only activated in front over here, but also this little checkbox down below, which is going to ensure that it's later displayed in the on-screen display or the OSD. Then you could also choose to take a look at the CPU usage and temperature if you like, and the CPU clock. But most importantly, you will need the frame rate over here, so make sure to also check that box over here. After you've chosen all the values, make sure to hit apply over here. By the way, with the little program on RTSS, which comes with MSI Afterburner and will start with MSI Afterburner, you can find it over here. It's a little blue screen. You can adjust the size of the OSD over here. You can see this is going to change the size, and the position, you can change it over here by just entering some numbers that you would like. And it's going to move the OSD around your screen. Okay, now the next app that we're using is the HW Info, and I'm going to open that up. When it starts, it might show a little window, and in that window you can actually hit a button called Sensors Only, which then will open this list over here. And this is going to show you all the sensors in your PC that actually are measurable, and it's a very long list. But what we need is to scroll down until we find the GPU. It's usually near to the very end of this huge list. Here it is, the GPU. It might say something different for you. That depends on the GPU that you have. And the two values that are important for us are the GPU core voltage, which is this over here, and the GPU power, this over here. This is going to allow us to later see the energy that we're actually saving. Okay, so what we need to do is right click for the GPU core voltage and choose the OSD RTX settings. And that way we can just send those values over to our OSD. So click over here and then activate these two checkboxes, show value in OSD and show label in OSD, so you know which is which. And hit OK, and that's going to actually display it here in the first place. Do the same for the GPU power. Over here, OSD RTX settings, and activate those two little checkboxes. Okay. Now that we've done that, we can minimize HW info. But don't close it though. Now, if you've done all these steps correctly, your in-game OSD should look something like this. I actually adjusted mine so it looks a bit different, but that won't be a problem to follow this video. Now, the next thing that we need to do is to actually open MSI Afterburner again, so it's in top over here, and we are going to use this curve editor over here. You can also just hit Control F, which will bring up this curve. This is going to do the same as hitting curve editor. So now, how is actually undervolting? How is it actually working? The first thing we need to do is actually have the benchmark running, and then we take a look at the stock values of our GPU, the stock clock of our GPU core. So right now the RTX 3050, which I use, is running at a GPU core of 1935, combined with a core voltage of 1.081 volt. And that is the stock value for this GPU. But actually the GPU does not need that much voltage, and what we're going to do now is to reduce the voltage while maintaining the core clock, and that way we won't lose any performance, but we will lose power draw, which will reduce the heat and the noise because the fans don't have to run that fast, etc. Okay, so before we start, what I like to do over here, let me close this window. I like to actually set the camera into the free mode in the benchmark, and just fly around this like in a shooter game. And I'm going to look for a scene that's going to allow us to have 100 FPS, because that way we can later easily in our heads calculate how much % of performance we've lost, etc. Okay, so once again we open the curve editor. And how the curve editor works is on the left side we have the value for the core clock, and at the bottom we have the value for the core voltage. And right now it's running at 1935 megahertz with a core voltage of 1.08, and this is about you can see where this dotted line over here hits that curve. This is the point that's actually applied right now. So we are about, I think it's about over here. So what we are going to do now is we press Alt, which is going to actually allow us to not only adjust one of these nodes over here, but all of them, and press Alt and lower them like this. And then we're going to try out what is going to work for us. We are going to reduce the voltage until the game actually crashes, because that way we can then adjust the voltage a bit higher and make sure that we'll be stable. So for a first step, maybe you can choose 1 volt instead of 1.08 volt, and actually use that point over here, raise it up until you hit on the left side, you hit the same core clock or about the same core clock that you had before. You can also use your arrow keys to do that. So we're going to try if 1000 millivolt is enough. And then you just over here hit apply with this little hook over here. And what MSI Afterburner is doing, it's automatically adjusting the fan curve, the voltage curve for us. So right now you can see we have the same performance. We almost have the same core clock, but our GPU power has dropped and also our voltage has dropped. But because I already undervolted the RTX 3050, I happen to know the lowest voltage setting that I can use for the specific card that I own. This actually might differ from your GPU if you also happen to have an RTX 3050, but you might just use the values that I have for a start and see if it's stable or not. So once again, I'm going to press Alt and lower all these nodes over here. And as a matter of fact, 900 millivolt is stable for my system at 1935 megahertz. So I'm going to choose this and hit apply. And as you can see, we lost about 3 FPS, so that's like 3%. But we also reduced the wattage by quite a bit. So what we could do is we could actually choose a little higher voltage and choose a little higher core clock as well. Okay, sometimes it's not working because sometimes Afterburner is a bitch. We have to try that again. Okay, let's reset that and do it from scratch. We're choosing 925 and a bit higher core clock. Okay, right now. So you have to fiddle around to actually find a setting that's not going to lose you any performance, but will reduce the GPU power. You can see that it's almost the same performance. Now what you can do to quickly change between these states is, now that you have this setting, you can actually click on this little disk over here to save that setting to a profile. And what I usually do is that before I start, let me reset the settings over here. Before I start, I actually save the default profile, the default settings, click that disk and save it to profile number 3, which is right in the middle. And then I'm going to apply some other profiles to 1, 2, 4 and 5. And I'm going to assign a hotkey, which you can do in the options over here. And I'm going to assign hotkey so I can in-game quickly change through or skip through my profiles and my settings to see what's actually happening in the game, which I highly recommend to do because it's a lot of fun actually. Yeah. Okay, now, so as I said before, I actually happened to undervolt the RTX 3050. So this is the number 2 profile is my profile for not losing performance, but actually I have to activate that. Not losing performance, but actually losing a lot of power draw. And as you can see, once I do this, my GPU immediately starts to run a little bit cooler. And the fan speed will lower itself after a while. But what I also usually do is I'm going to use profile number 1 to apply the lowest possible undervolt, and for the MSI Afterburner or in general for Nvidia cards, that seems to be 700 millivolts. So I'm trying to find out at which megahertz core clock can I actually run a GPU when only giving it 700 millivolt. And in terms of the RTX 3050, that was around 1500, which was stable. If I would choose a higher megahertz, games would start to crash. So if I do this, you can actually see that the wattage dropped to around 45 watt. I'm only losing around 30% of performance, but I'm also reducing the power draw by it's less than half the wattage than before, so the efficiency is rising drastically. And why do I do that? Because some games actually They don't need that much FPS, because if I'm running a indie game or an older game, I don't need my GPU to run and to run at full speed, because that's just generate heat and it's going to generate noise. It's going to degrade faster. It costs money at the end of the month. You use more energy and the electricity bill will be higher. So what I'm doing is I'm using this profile for all the games, or when I actually play a game there where I can cap the FPS to 60 and still reach that 60 FPS with this profile. I might do that to actually save energy and have a basically silent PC. But something I forgot, if it's stable in this benchmark, Unigine Heaven, that does not mean that it's going to be stable in a game. So once you've found stable values, make sure that you run some games, run some benchmarks, and if it crashes, you will have to adjust the fan curve a bit. So, and if you want to go back to the original values, you can always hit this little icon over here, which is going to reset everything that you've done. If it crashes, don't worry, nothing is going to happen. Your display driver is going to restart. You probably sometimes might have to restart your PC, but it's not going to destroy anything. It's not going to break. On the contrary, since your GPU is running cooler with undervolting, it will actually live a little bit longer probably. And on profile number 5, I applied an overclock profile, but the RTX 3050 is not very good for, or at least the model that I have the Zotac Twin OC is not very good for overclocking. You can only gain around 3 to 4%, yeah, because the power limit isn't that great. Actually, as you can see over here, right now it pulls around 110 watt. But in a game that will be a bit more, and to prove that, we are going to test our values right now with The Witcher 3. So I'm going to open that. Okay, so right now we are running The Witcher 3 with high settings and the stock values for the RTX 3050. And as you can see, we are right now using 113 watt with a core voltage of 1.08 volt. The GPU is around 63 degrees and the core clock at 1935 megahertz. Now I'm going to apply the undervolt, which is basically not losing any performance, and see what happens now. The performance drops by 1 to 2 FPS, but the GPU power dropped by around 30 watt. So that's basically 30 watt that you're saving right now, which is like the equivalent of 3 to 4 light bulbs, energy saving light bulbs. The GPU temperature immediately dropped by around 5 degrees and the GPU stayed the same. The GPU core stayed about the same. Now if I hit my super undervolt profile, I'm losing around 16 FPS. The game is still perfectly playable. As you can see, we are going from 100 to 85 FPS. But the GPU power is basically it's half the power that we need. So we're actually saving around 60 watt right now. That's kind of crazy. The GPU temperature dropped to 51 degrees Celsius. It probably will drop a little bit more. And of course the GPU is running a little bit less loud right now because the fans don't have to run that fast. So in my opinion, that's a good way to actually play all the games, and games where you actually cap the FPS at 60. Be aware that just capping the FPS won't save you as much energy as capping the FPS and applying an undervolt. That's going to maximize it. So let's try that out. We're going to cap the FPS for The Witcher 3 at 60 with the same settings. Right now we're running at 60, so that's going to save us another 8 to 10 watt. And now the GPU is only running at 47 watt, running The Witcher 3 at high settings in full HD. Okay, that was my little undervolting video. If you have any questions about how to undervolt your GPU or what to do, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'm trying to answer as much as possible. If you like this content, make sure to hit that subscribe button over there, or the like button at least. Thanks for watching, see you next time, bye bye and cheers.